Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga, text number 3. Aruruksharamanir Yogam Karma Karnamuchite Yogarudasya Tasyaiva Shama Karnamuchite Aruruksharamanir Yogam Karma Karnamuchite Yogarudasya Tasyaiva Samakarnamuchite Aruksharamanir Yogam Karma Karnamuchite Yogarudasya Tasyaiva Samakarnamuchite Aruksharamanir Yogam Karma Karnamuchite Yogarudasya Tasyaiva Samakarnamuchite. Jenske. Aruksharamanir Yogam Karma Karnamuchite Yogarudasya Tasyaiva Samakarnamuchite Aruruksho, who has just begun yoga. Mune of the sage. Yogam, the eightfold yoga system. Karma, work. Karnam, the means. Uchate is said to be. Yoga, eightfold yoga. Arudasya, of one who has attained. Tasya, his. Eva, certainly. Shamaha, cessation of all material activities. Karnam, the means. Uchate is said to be. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. For one who is a neophyte in the eightfold yoga system, work is said to be the means. And for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. Purport. The process of linking oneself with the Supreme is called yoga. It may be compared to a ladder for obtaining the topmost spiritual realization. This ladder begins from the lowest material condition of the living entity and rises up to perfect self-realization and pure spiritual life. According to the various elevations, different parts of the ladder are known by different names. But all in all, the complete ladder is called yoga. It may divide into 3 parts, namely Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. The beginning of the ladder is called the Yoga Rurukshu stage. The highest rung is called Yoga Ruda. Concerning the eightfold yoga system, attempts in the beginning to enter into meditation through regular principles of life and practice of different sitting postures, which are more or less bodily exercises, are considered fruit of material activities. All such activities lead to perfect mental equilibrium, control of the senses. When one is accomplished in the practice of meditation, he ceases all disturbing material activities. Krishna conscious person, however, is situated from the beginning on the platform of meditation because he always thinks of Krishna, and being constantly engaged in the service of Krishna, he is considered to have ceased all material activities. Aruksharamanir Yogam Karma Karnamuchite Yogarudasya Tasyaiva samakaranam uchate. For one who is a neophyte in the Eightfold Yoga system, work is said to be the means, and for one who is already elevated in yoga, the cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. Namo Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Taramane Namaste Saratudundeve Gauravani Vicharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade Satarane. Generally, there are two stages of self-realization. One stage is getting free from the material conceptions of life, and the other stage is actual working on the spiritual platform. For the yoga system, there's also two different stages. One of them is considered here yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, and then beginning with dhyana, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. When one is actually thinking about Krishna, then that's considered to be spiritual. The other aspects are considered to be material. Just like we have acharyam eva harye pujam yaksharaye hete Itandaneshu chanyesu sabhakta prakrita smitaha. That those who are worshiping the deity in the temple, but they don't know how to properly relate to the devotees, they're considered to be on the prakriti platform, the material platform. On different levels of the material platform, Shreyak Swadum, the fourth chapter. That's the one before that. Shreyak Swadum, Shreyak. Shreyam Dravya Maya Jagnat, Jnana Jagna Parantapa, Sarvam Karma Kilam Partha, Jnani Parisamapite. The sacrifice of knowledge, O chastise of the enemy. The sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. O son of Kunti, after all, O son of Pritha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. In other words, there's two aspects of working on the material platform also for a devotee. One of them is karma yoga and the other is jnana yoga. Karma yoga is within the realm of stress, distress, trying to get free from distress, and trying to attain material comfort. And according to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that's the level of Shudras and Vaishyas. And Jnana Yoga is the Kshatriyas and the Brahmins. So it's better to work on the knowledge acquiring platform, because with perfect knowledge, as Krishna says, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nishoshiti Nakangshiti Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. That one has knowledge, he can see everyone as Krishna's eternal servant, and he no longer laments nor desires. That's the person who's actually situated in knowledge. Most people would not agree with that. People don't go to university to see everyone equally. Nor do they try to get free from hankering and lamentation. This is not exactly considered to be, if you go into college and you write on all your tests, I'm no longer hankering nor lamenting. I see everyone equally, therefore I think I should get my PhD. Actually, if you see everyone equally and stop hankering and lamenting, you won't even pass the kindergarten nowadays. They won't let you out of the first grade, if that's all you know. But that was the aim of Gurukul previously. That Brahmachari Gurukule Vasandanta Gurorhitam Achavan Dasavan Nicho Sodri Sorida. That the brahmacharis would go there and that's what they learned. How to get free from lamentation and hankering, and how to treat everyone as a spiritual being. That was basically it. Brahmachari Gurukule Dasam. Because one would learn how to control the mind and senses and not hanker and lament. But that's not true nowadays. So actually there is no knowledge in modern society. What they're cultivating is different degrees of ignorance. And generally speaking, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that one is born as a Shudra, and then by modern education one becomes less than an animal. But if we told people that, they become very disturbed. They don't appreciate it. As a matter of fact, if we act like everyone else and go back to college and get our PhD degree and whatever else degree, then people will think we're normal. Then we're actually intelligent. And if we simply try to control our mind and senses and realize the self within, people will think that we're crazy. What are these people? They're useless. All they do is smile and chant Hare Krishna all the time. And they think they're better than everyone else. They tell everyone to do the same thing. And once in a while we hear them chanting Swavidra Hostra Karara Samstuta Purusha Pashu Niyat Karna Patiyo Peto Jatanam Gadagarja. The men who are like hogs and dogs and camels and asses, they glorify the bigger hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, but they never glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead who's holding a club. So even the most basic principle of yama, niyama, which is considered fruit of activities, yama means what you're supposed to do personally, like being truthful, is not considered a very important quality nowadays. If you go on book distribution and you ask people for a donation, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is a lie. Most people will immediately claim they have no money. And if you can convince them, give anything you want, then they open their wallet and all there is, 50 euro notes. Sorry, I have no money. I can give you change. Well, it's not my money, it's my friend's money. Just how it happens, it's in my wallet. So people are not by nature truthful, they're not clean, they're not merciful, they don't have even the qualities, the beginning. They have a peaceful mind. One may think, well, I don't have to be truthful. I don't have to be clean. I don't have to be austere. I don't have to be asteya. I don't have to be non-stealing. I don't have to have any good qualities. I just have to make money, and then I can enjoy my senses, and my life is complete. That's all I need. And if it's not against the law, then we should make it not against the law. In other words, what was against the law 50 years ago is now not against the law anymore. Because otherwise they'd have to put everyone in jail, including the police. So there's no standard law. There's no standard, because it's all based upon how much sense gratification you can get by exploiting others so that the majority of the people don't complain. So yama niyama, and so even social contract, one of them is Ishvara Pradhana, worshiping the Supreme Lord. This has become just an imagination. People actually think that this is really a waste of time. And even social values, I guess asteya is non-stealing, is amongst the social values. And then, if one has a peaceful mind, he can sit in one place. asana in Hindi means easy. Is that right? So asana means sit down easily. That's all. That's why all the exercises are all just meant so you can sit down cross-legged or in some kind of position that you don't, get up every 5 minutes and stretch your legs. That's all these asanas are meant for. And then from there, you can practice breathing. Because the irregular breath is when the mind is disturbed, the breath is disturbed, if you ever noticed. And when the breath is regulated, then the mind becomes regulated, becomes undisturbed. So pranayama is just to get more or less to regulate the breathing so the mind becomes peaceful. Actually, the body requires breathing, requires breath in order to feel good, in order to survive. You can go without eating for 30 days, or you can't go usually without 5-10 minutes without breathing. So we get enough breath and the mind becomes peaceful. I'm not going to die. I'm all right. Things. And then after that, pratyahara, when the mind is peaceful, then one doesn't need so many things. He doesn't have to look outside and figure out, is there still enough grains for me to eat for the next year in case there's the coronavirus, the quarantine goes on for another year. Oh, there's only half a year. Oh no, what are we going to do? So pratyahara means one is peaceful enough. He's not looking around in the world to try and figure out what's going right and what's going wrong, what the threats are. And so one can then think about Krishna. But in the beginning, it's not very clear. Dharana, there's just some conception. And then when it becomes clearer, dhyana, one can focus specifically on Krishna. And then one comes to samadhi. We have something similar. In the beginning, we're just trying to figure out what we're doing here, how we got here, what we're doing here, how long we're going to stay here. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada suggests that we go to some place which is Krishna conscious, some place which is sacred, and then try to give up all material attachments and try to peacefully hear and chant about Krishna. So that's called Shravana Dasa. Dasa means position, I guess. Dasa, the situation. Shravana, where we can actually hear peacefully. Just like, why do we have the temple here? Why is the speaker on a higher seat? Because there's more oxygen up here and he won't fall asleep like everyone else. No, that's not why. No, the reason why is to give the speaker some respect so that the audience can hear better, that's all. Because hearing doesn't depend upon just the physical situation of our ear. It depends, how much we can hear depends upon our receptivity. And so the speaker is given a higher place. That indicates that he has something to say that's important. That's all. Now, if everyone else was sitting on a higher place and who's like looking up to them, people think, well, if he had anything important to say, he'd be up there with us. But actually, maybe we should talk to him, help him come up to a higher situation. So making the atmosphere conducive so we can hear. And what is the object of hearing? Varana dasa. That is acceptance. That we're hearing, but we're going, no. That's not for me. Come on. Get real. Who are you trying to fool? So, okay, I can accept that much. I shouldn't eat 3 times as much as I should. Maybe just twice. That's called Varna Das. We accept it. It sounds like good. I'll try the Sunday feast after next. So the stage of acceptance is called Varna Dasa. And one can accept and accumulate or assimilate the philosophy of Krishna consciousness then the result is that one actually becomes factually convinced that I'm eternal and that I have nothing to worry about. I should do something positive. That's called Brahmabhuta stage, where one is actually aware that one is a spiritual being, and therefore there are spiritual activities, beginning with Smarana Dasa. Smarana Dasa has 5 stages of progressive Krishna Smaranam. There's Smaranam, then there is Dharana, then there's Dhyana Anusmriti, then Dhyana Anusmriti, and Samadhi. So very close to the yoga system, more or less similar. That one can actually have some conception, one is thinking about Krishna, as it says in Madhurya Kandambini, that one remembers Krishna sometimes, especially during, that's why we have sadhana. So we come here and we look at, the deities. Oh, that's right. I think Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that's your name. That's right. I never forget a face. Nit something. Nit Ananda. Nityananda. And the other is not so important. 2 top ones are the important ones. So, some kind of vague understanding, yes, this is God and he's somewhere there and whatever. So that's called Smarana. So once in a while we remember Krishna and we think, well, I'm practicing, I'm a Parama Bhakti, I remember Krishna. Practically back in the spiritual world, right? So it's intermediate remembrance of Krishna. So that's more or less what we're practicing. In the beginning, the central focus is sadhana. When there's sadhana, then there's some remembrance of Krishna, and therefore spiritual life is more or less focused on the sadhana. It's what are they called? It's restricted for a certain time and place, our Krishna consciousness. And then the vast majority of our consciousness is outside that realm of Krishna consciousness. And as it expands, then as the internal thinking of Krishna expands, then material nature slackens. Even at the stage of Nishtha, spiritual conception becomes more pervasive, as it says in the Madhurya Kandambini, and material consciousness slackens, which is quite interesting. At the point of liberation, spiritual consciousness is pervasive, and material consciousness is slackened. So even at the state of Nishtha, when one is not so much influenced by material desires and conceptions, still they're there. They're just not so influential anymore. And at the stage of ruchi, it becomes more and more pervasive and more intense, etc., etc. So that's the same thing as the yoga system. But if we try to practice the yoga system, no one's going to do it in this age, because the beginning is yama niyama. There's no culture for that. There's no way of practice. You'd starve to death if you were honest. You'd have to go in, some secluded place and grow your own food to begin with. Not associate with anyone, because you'd be lying to each other all day. So it would be very difficult even to practice yama and niyama, and what to speak of asana. People would just be doing exercises. Stretching, they think stretching is asana. Or doing intense exercise to lose weight. As if no fat people can go back to the spiritual world. Now, losing weight doesn't help you go back to the spiritual world. And then what to speak of actually doing pranayama, people get bored. It's really a boring process. Even get to that stage. Sitting there for, your whole life just... People have no patience. And then what to speak of, and then pratyahara, sitting there detached. People get really nervous. What's going on here? And then you begin thinking about Krishna in a vague way, like we're doing. It's not really clear, but it's somewhere. And that goes on for Kardamuni, and took him 10,000 years. We wouldn't even do it for 15 minutes, the process. It would be too difficult. So our process is the quickest, but because we're not focused, because we don't have the realizations to actually even understand that we should be focused when we're doing our sadhana, therefore our results are only relative to our particular state of karma, the particular waves of material energy that are affecting us at that time, according to the modes of nature that we're being affected by due to our karma. And therefore we don't really know to focus on what we're doing, or how to even focus, or how to not focus, how to get distracted, or how to, when we are distracted, bring our consciousness back. So this is what we have to learn, so that devotional service in sadhana bhakti becomes more focused. And therefore it becomes pervasive outside the realm of sadhana. Prabhupada wanted us to dedicate to the spreading of the Hare Krishna movement so that there's not such a big difference between our sadhana and what we're trying to do in the material world. When there's a big difference between the sadhana and what people are doing in the material world, then it becomes difficult to actually relate the sadhana to thinking of Krishna, because one is getting some inspiration in the sadhana, but then when one goes back to the material world, then the result, working in the material world, one gets distracted because everyone else is distracted due to the association into so many other realms. So Prabhupada thought that book distribution would be enough to support the movement if everything else was actually properly organized, if the devotees were actually convinced that the spreading of the Hare Krishna movement is the prime necessity of human civilization. Then everything can be, I think Krishna will supply everything economically. But if we're not so focused in sadhana and we're not so convinced about the preaching, then sometimes in some of our centers, maintaining themselves economically simply through the preaching becomes like just an idea. Maybe there's enough Indians, the Indians come and throw money in the hundi, get some blessings, and that way the temple gets supported. But then that's not usually, the devotees get lazy. That's what in India, they show the deity and people throw money in the box, or at least they encourage them to throw money in the box. Nowadays you can see, it's amazing they can survive. Have beautiful deities, nice temples, and very few even people come. Most of the time they're not really, they put in a few rupees or something like that. That's what the temple has to survive on. Maybe they have supporters, I don't know. But when I first came to Vrindavan, it was really a mess in terms of Vrindavan was not very, it's not nice now either, but there, everywhere was open sewers, I guess there still are. The hogs were everywhere. And the sewers opening their mouth and everything was flowing in. The dogs were running everywhere. Everything was not very nice. Because people didn't really know what the value of the deities are. There was no training. So now there's a little training. People have become aware. And so the rich people from Delhi have moved to Vrindavan and made Vrindavan like a little city, drove out most of the monkeys and the hogs. So, but it's still not very, it's in general, the mode of ignorance is still there because people are just not focused. They don't really know what Vrindavan is really meant for, the value of Vrindavan. And therefore they don't take care of it properly. They don't understand the value of serving Vrindavan. So if you walk around Vrindavan, you can see the sadhus there. what they're mostly growing is not tulsi, they're growing marijuana. Did you ever notice that?
I saw the plant, but I didn't see them being grown.
So the sadhus are high, but not necessarily in Krishna consciousness. What's that?
I'm just thinking if in Delhi it's also like that.
Delhi? Nothing grows in Delhi. Anyways, so the point of this class is that we should value our sadhana, and this is our opportunity to actually learn how to control our mind and senses. If we don't, and by focusing on what we're doing, and by doing that, one will become elevated in self-realization. Simply by that, doesn't require physical exercise, doesn't require great material learning, doesn't require even great spiritual learning. Just requires the determination and the proper attitude of love, of focusing our attention and then giving our love to Krishna. That's all this philosophy is all meant to convince us of. So I'll stop there. Any questions or comments?
Regarding these 8 steps of yoga, can we use some meditation techniques for focusing on our japa? That
complete waste of time. It just distracts us. Of course, that depends on the seriousness. Like for instance, if one doesn't have faith in the technique of chanting japa, you can use so many techniques. So many techniques, he knows everything, but he doesn't know how to chant japa. He knows how to, all these, but chanting japa is quite simple. The more we make it complicated, the more we just get confused. We go away from with the simple process of crying out, of chanting Hare Krishna lovingly and feelingly, asking Srimati Radharani and Krishna to engage us in their service. When we start making all these meditation techniques, it's like you have the Supreme Personality of Godhead there, and you're trying to figure out, he said just, call out to me and I'll give you whatever you want. And you're making plans, how you can trick him into giving you 50 cents. He's a multi-trillionaire. You're trying to make plans how you can trick him into giving you 50 cents. All you do is have to ask him, and he can give you anything you want. So why not just directly chant Hare Krishna, pay a little attention, and doing it with a little feeling? That's all that's necessary. We have all these retreats, and mostly we have these retreats because people don't practice, and therefore they need some retreat with all kinds of instruction so they can try this way and that way. But the simple way is usually it's too easy. You can't have a retreat. But it's good for people who don't practice at all because it keeps them occupied in something Krishna conscious. It's like the Kirtan Mela, people go for a week or sometimes 3 or 4 days, they chant Hare Krishna, 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, whatever. They go home, they don't even have a morning program. So what did they learn in the Kirtan Mela? What was the value of it? They couldn't understand the value, they like it. They like the music, they like the vibes, they like everything. They like participating, but it's just like, it's almost like a rock concert or something. Everyone gets enthusiastic, but they don't go home and have their little band in their home. So the point is, it's not necessary. Otherwise, Prabhupada would have had written a book on how to chant japa. We don't even find it. And he just says, chant Hare Krishna. So they probably did not know how to chant japa, so he couldn't tell us how to do it. Like a child calling for its mother. That's all he could tell us. Well, try that and see what happens. We're sitting there meditating. Om Krishna Namaha, Om Krishna Namaha, Om Radha Namaha. I try chanting with feeling and attention. Yes.
Last year, to support of what you are saying, last year I heard some memory about Srila Prabhupada. Madhananda Prabhu was talking with Niranjana Maharaj, so he said, Srila Prabhupada, that's from Pradyumna Prabhu, the Pandit. And Srila Prabhupada saw him having Harinam Chintamani in Bengali. And Prabhupada said, if you want to get some of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's books, this book is too simple. This is just about 10, how to avoid the 10 offenses. That's not for you. You better get Jivadharma or something like that. It was quite interesting that already in the 70s, Prabhupada said, this is just about the 10 offenses. You get the other one.
You have to know Pradumya to understand. But I don't know how reliable these things are also sometimes. But in any case, I think we can understand that if we could actually avoid the 10 offenses, because in Harinam Chintamani, then he talks about Siddha Pranali after that. So the next stage is not Jaiva Dharma, it's Siddha Pranali. So I don't know. It's interesting. Anything else? Yes. But all I can say, I'm still at the beginning of Harinam Chintamani. Yes.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. How to develop a state of acceptance, receiving moods?
Hear from a lot. Try to remember what we heard. Try to think about in different ways what we heard. That's one of the reasons why we learn Sanskrit. Not so we can look like we're a pandit, so that we can impress people or tell people things in front of them that they can't understand. No, the reason why we can do it is because the Sanskrit language is we can reference different verses easily and see how they relate to each other. Like in this, Krishna says the word matparaha, rely upon me. So in Bhagavad Gita, there's a number of verses that use that matparaha. Chetasa sarvakarmani maya sannyasi matparaha buddhi yogam upashitya matshita sadatam bhava tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita matparaha. So we can analyze, what this actually means from different perspectives. And then if we think about it, if we're actually thinking on different ways of looking at something, then we can relate it to our own experience to see if it actually fits into my experience. And if it actually fits into my experience, then it's much more likely I'm going to accept it because it makes sense in my practical life. I can see it, how it's actually working in my life. And when we can see how it's working in my life, then we can see how it's instructing me how I can do something better, improve my life. And that's called acceptance, when we actually start doing what we're actually seeing through the verse. Is that clear?
Yes.
A lot of times people read the Bhagavad Gita and they think, well, this really has nothing to do with me. Some kind of, I'm not this body. Oh, I knew that. I knew that this first week I joined, I knew that. Krishna is God. Yeah, everyone knows that, right? Anyhow, all these other things about yoga, and I don't practice yoga, karma yoga. That's the people working on the outside, the karmis or something. Jnana yoga. I'm not jnani. What do I need this for? So the whole thing, Bhagavad Gita becomes kind of boring, so much philosophy, nothing to do with me. So when we make a little advancement, then we actually start seeing it actually has something to do with me. So that's good. Then we actually read Bhagavad Gita to learn something. And then when we actually start learning something, means we learn how it actually applies in my life, and we start applying it to our life. That's called acceptance. Anything else? Thank you very much. Grandaraj Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.